All right, let's call this meeting to order. This is the special meeting of the budget evaluation team, Tuesday, April 14. Roll call, it looks like all primary members are present. Notice that this meeting was properly posted on April 10. I think what we're here to, we got multiple agenda items on here. Happy to go through any of that, but let's go ahead and pick up the revenue part first. And then if there's anything that we want to take up with the other agenda items, we can do that afterwards. So let's start out with item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding general fund revenue projections for FY 26-27. Chantel, are you presenting?
Yes.
Okay.
Before I get started, and I know there's a lot of papers, so apologies. I hope this small analysis helps answer some of the questions that were brought up over the last few days. You guys can take one, pass it down, I'll give you half. Take one, pass it down, and then I'll just kind of work through this.
And is this different, Chantel, than
This has not,
any of the documents that were attached to these?
that is correct. This is a brand new document, not seen before by any.
Without objection, the chair will ask the clerk's office to make this document part of the record. Seeing no objection.
And then are any of the documents listed as attachments going to be anything that you provide something new to them?
No. I do not have something new. I will be referencing the fiscal year 26-27 general fund revenue dash statement of revenues 002. That's the first attachment. And so just briefly to introduce the conversation, I was just going to touch on, you already had a room, the totals that we have for this fiscal year.
It's not. Magic touch. Thank you.
So for the 26-27 fiscal year, we're looking at an unbalanced projection of, this is the sixth column at the bottom. Fund balance 37,865,221. Total sources available 163,224,578. And this shows to be a $507,452 change from the fiscal year 25-26 amended budget. That's kind of how I started last Thursday, so I just kind of wanted to start there. Nothing has changed on the statement of revenue before you. That's been attached to the agenda. What I did do, and I wanted to thank everybody that was able to meet with Marissa and I yesterday or by phone call, to be able to understand the questions or provide some clarification. And but I will now reference this sheet. This is what I'm calling the trends. I think one of the main questions I received from many offices was just to explain the trend. How did we get here? And so what I have before you is just a brief snapshot, specifically utilizing the statement of revenues for each fiscal year, starting with fiscal year 22. I don't have this attached, it's just before you today. And what we can see is just, if you look down the total sources column, the top line shows period adopted, total sources $105 million. So that was your total sources for the fiscal year 22. And it right below it shows what was adopted in by budget board on 9/16. The amended total sources, 111 million. What I'm trying to establish is to answer many more questions that came later. So I'm just kind of trying to establish a foundation there. Total surplus, 5.5 million. For fiscal year 23, you can follow the same path. The adopted total sources, 111. The amended total sources, 120, total surplus, 8.5 million. For fiscal year 24, we then see an adopted total sources, 120 million. The amended, those received by budget board, 130 million. And the change in the surplus was 9.9. Fiscal year 25 is whenever we receive the sheriff's ARPA reimbursement dollars. So this is when things get a little different. And we also started tracking, this body started tracking the one-time versus ongoing and kind of how that started to get organized from that point. So here you see the adopted statement of revenues. Fund balance is 9 million. The total sources was 125. In September of 2024, the amended fund balance was 28 million. Total sources was 147. So here's that big jump. Total surplus, or the difference, was 22 million. What makes up that 22 million? Here you have, this was notated on the statement of revenues at this time. The one-time funds was 18.8 million and ongoing funds was 3.4. So this was notated on the statement of revenues at that time that was adopted by budget board, and I wanted just to kind of give us a starting place. So that's kind of where your ongoing and your one-time kind of started, and it feeds into this year, this large carryover basically. So for 26, I show here that July 1, or I'm sorry, it was the June 2025 budget board meeting where the statement of revenues was adopted at 17.3 fund balance, total sources 138. There wasn't a notation for any sort of split or the surplus at the time. In September of 18, this is whenever we brought the final statement of revenues to budget board, where it showed the fund balance of 16 million. This was a comment I made last Friday, that 16 million was inaccurately stated and needed to be a different number, which gives us a 14 million variance. That's been the point of our discussion over the last few days. But just following along, what we reported and what was adopted for the September supplement was a fund balance of 16 million, total sources 142 million, with a surplus of 4.4. That 4.4 is what budget board approved as a September supplement. Of the 4.4, what is ongoing and what is one time? There was a notation, or at least through what we show, 1.5 was the ARPA interest that has always been considered as one-time funds. That's why you have that highlighted there in yellow, 1.5. So the difference would leave you with 2.9 as your ongoing funds. What I have out to the side under grand total sources, this is to answer a question. I only had a couple people ask me this, but I felt like it was necessary to show, regardless of the large surplus that we received in fiscal year 25 from the sheriff's reimbursement, what would have been our normal total sources? What would have been the trend? And so to answer that question, by removing the one-time funds, is the new value under grand total sources. And it shows for the amended fiscal year 25 would have been 129 million. For the amended fiscal year 26, grand total sources, removing the one-time funds, is 141. As I stated just a little bit ago, the 16 million should have been a corrected fund balance number. So what I have right below it is what I was trying to present on Thursday, what would have been the corrected numbers, and I have been asked multiple times to kind of show that, so here it is. Right underneath, I'm calling it just revised 414. This is not something I brought to budget board. This is not something I'm bringing back to BET for reconsideration or correction. This is just to help the conversation get us to this year. So revised 414, the correctly stated fund balance is 30 million, which would have given us a total sources of 156 million with a total surplus of 18.5 million. As I was asked last Thursday, whether the variance, the 14 million, whether that's one time or ongoing, This is my answer to you all. $14,050,971 is under one-time funds. Ongoing is $4,452,025, which is the same number as your September supplement, rounding formula there. What makes up the 14 million? I have a small breakdown right underneath. Here you have surplus cash. What that means is from the prior year, any available funds that weren't encumbered in PO that would have lapsed. So you have 6.3 million of those funds. ARPA interest, this was discussed at prior BET meeting of 2.5 million. And then the balance of general fund reserve at the time, 5.1 million, which totals your 1405. So looking at those three sources, I did put the total dollar amount of 14,050,000 under the one-time column. That was not something that was, like I said, it didn't come to this board or get voted on. I'm sorry, Cody, did you have a question?
Well,
You go on and finish, but I do.
yeah, earlier, maybe I misheard, but the $14,050,971 is the amount that was determined that should have been included back in September, right? That was that dollar amount. Okay. But when you're coming up with the breakdown for the dollar amount, you're adding in the general fund reserve at 4/1/26,
6 months later.
which is 6 months later, and we've spent money out of that reserve account. So I don't know how, and maybe I'm just ignorant about it, but I don't know how that number would play into this.
That's what I was gonna ask too. How does the general fund reserve 6 months later play into the balance that should have been in the 9/18/2025 amended budget?
I mean, if it was the general fund reserve balance at October 1st, I could see how that would play in and be part of that 14 million, but not
Right.
now after we've spent out of that general fund reserve that we started.
You're right. Let me clarify. I was asked on Thursday, what does the 14 million comprise of, or what makes up that number? So we've been working really hard to try to find that breakdown. Because those funds weren't captured at September, and they are now part of the calculation for this fiscal year's statement of revenue. That leads us to the next line, the fiscal year 27 statement of revenue. And then in order to break down the total surplus 20 million, it splits the same way, one-time funds and ongoing, and I can tell you where that ongoing amount 6.4 comes from. The variance is 1405. This is a breakdown that adds up to that same amount. I hope I.
So if the remaining general fund reserve was part of that, so you're saying really the only difference that we didn't know about was 8.8. Is that right?
No.
The difference between the 14 and what was left in general fund reserve?
Not according to the financial statements, when you look, or the financial reports, when
So if let's play Bill and Ted for a minute and let's go back in time.
Let's pretend we're sitting here in September of 25.
Right. So we're October 1 after September supplement, and you were standing there and you said, oh, hey, we just adopted the budget. We missed an amount of money. Do we want to reopen the budget, or do we want to just roll forward, which what we've done is just roll forward. But let's say we're having this discussion back then. That number that you would have told us was the 14,050,000. Is that correct?
The number I would have told you at that time would have been, so I gave you all a 4.4 number at that time. The difference is 14, but the number I would have given you was 18.5.
No, I get that, but what we were missing after the budget was set, you would have told us was the 14,050,000, right?
Yes.
Okay, So what would that $14,050,000, what would that have included then? Because if we're back then, you wouldn't know what the reserve balance is on April 1st, which is the $5,159,279. You wouldn't have known that back in October because we've spent out of that reserve account sent between October and now. So how would you have broken that down?
And that was gonna be my exact question. Let's kind of pretend we're back in the same BET meeting just prior to the budget board accepting the amended September supplement. What would that, I mean, it appears here that all of our total sources would have been 156,768,000 at that time, which would have included the 14,050,000.
Go ahead.
What I got pulled up here, this is the calculation surplus spreadsheet that we use. And if you see down here, we have our 18,502.
Can you make that a little bit bigger, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, the reason I ask is because there is no way we missed the reserve balance when we did the September supplement. There's just no way. That 14 million had to come from somewhere else.
Well, the 14 million would have been included in the overall 30, but we only reported the 16, so that's where the difference comes in the 14.
Okay.
Yeah, so like for example here, your cash balance as of 6/30/25 was at 30 million. Well, due to the manual input error, the 16,002 is what we put in there for the fund balance itself.
Okay.
Which then, if you would have put in the correct 30 in there instead of the 16, that's where your 14 difference comes into play. Then you guys would have captured that.
Right.
Overall.
Where's the 16? I don't see the 16 on
It's on that sheet they handed out.
The other one, this includes the 2.5 ARPA interest correction that was done at September supplement as well. That was not caught during the initial.
Okay, so
period.
as of June, so this is based on June 30, 2025.
Yes.
So as of June 30, 2025, how much one-time money do we have in general fund reserve?
As of what date, Brandon?
Out of June 30th, 2025.
Let's see. Different one here.
We would have had at the time probably 8-ish million because of the sheriff's office returning. I don't even know the appropriate way to say that.
Is that the sheet? Because
It's kind of been.
that's the sheet where the 14 million, this sheet is where the 14 million showed up, right? That we should have seen in the financial reports.
October, is that October?
Well, this is every month. But yeah, October's is in here.
Now this is a spreadsheet that Christy provided, and as you can see, here's your one-time fund, 1.5 of the ARPA interest.
Yep.
And then there's your 2, which equals the 4.4,
Right.
which was September supplement, right? So then down at the bottom here, I believe that's what your
Yes.
reserve is at 10
Okay,
million.
I figured it was about 8.5. And does that 8.5 include the ARP interest? It should, right?
It should, yes.
Okay, so my point is I don't see how any more of the 14 million is one-time money, if that's the only amount of money we had at June 30th that we considered one time. Because everything would have been in the reserve, because that $14 million, if it came through the September supplement, how is it not lapsed money? But what am I missing there?
Well,
Albert, we can go up to the top.
yes.
Because it almost feels like when we're talking about a number that and I'm assuming, I mean, you guys have told us that number was known, should have been known. It was a concrete number in October of the 14,050,971. And then when we ask, and I don't think there's any dispute in here whether that's the number or not. I mean, we're trusting that that's the number. But then the follow-up question to that is, so that we can have definitive numbers for trying to make a recommendation to set next fiscal year's budget, what does that $14 million consist of, so that we know whether that's money that can be budgeted for ongoing or one-time expenses moving forward. And when you break that down, you're talking about a number that was known in October that is the same number today, but you're using a number from today that's part of that 14 million that was different in October. It almost feels like, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but it almost feels like, you know, a magician that says pick a card, and then at the end of the day, it's the how did you do that? I mean, that's really a cool thing. It doesn't make sense to me how Paul tracks what I'm saying.
So,
Can Paul interpret?
okay, so let me, and again, I mean, I know we can't live in the past, but, so if we were sitting here, again, let's pretend we're sitting here back in September of '05.
Right.
And we're.
Of 25.
Of 25, maybe '05 at this point. I feel like I'm in a time machine. So, if everything were done, and if all the formulas were captured correctly, whatever the case may be, you would have said that we have a total sources amount of $156,768,000, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so that's what should have been on the budget for FY '25. No,
26.
FY '26,
Yeah.
our current year.
Yes.
But instead we had 142,
Correct.
717, okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the number when somebody asks what our budget is, I always tell them 142 million. That's the number that I tell everybody when they ask.
Mhm.
So it's the difference between 156.7 and 142.7 is 14,050. Okay. But of that 14, the only money we had earmarked as one time was the 8.5 in reserve.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But then that's the other thing, like, when we're looking at, like, let me bring up this other sheet real quick.
because the 156 or the 142,717 would have included that 10 million in reserve. You would have had to have,
In all sense, yes.
and for all sources.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then, of course, it gets hard trying to differentiate
I know.
one time and ongoing.
Right.
Because as you can see on the spreadsheet here, we have, we factor in 10-day payroll, encumbrances, expenditures in order to call, and then of course the assessor's information to come down to the 18.5.
Right.
And then to determine, to truly come to an accurate number of what truly is one time, it's kind of hard.
Well, wouldn't we just go back and look, to Brandon's point, you look at the 156 that the number should have been.
Right.
You would subtract out the one-time money that was rolling forward in the general fund reserve. You'd subtract that out because that's one-time money.
Right, which should get you to the 6 million, something, I guess.
But okay, so, and I mean, this is probably a question for Christy and I mean everybody as well. But when we get during September supplement, we don't ever collect one-time money though, right?
No, the only one-time money would be this ARPA, your
Yeah.
share of ARPA would be the
In
one-time.
September, we picked up some more one-time money when we revised our interest figure for ARPA.
Right.
We picked up about
Okay.
750, and 750 was already budgeted.
But that's kind of
One point.
that's a rarity though.
Yeah, ARPA,
Yeah,
yeah.
Normally it's just lapsed money and unspent funds.
But that would have been included in the 156 number.
Yes.
Yes.
And we made the recommendation, and I think, Budget Board followed that the ARPA interest was going into reserve and gonna be earmarked as one-time dollars. So that's why I'm saying we would just take the 156 for last year at
Correct.
the September supplement, you take that 156 number, you subtract out the one-time money that was in general fund reserve, and that should be, of the $14 million, whatever that number was then, that was the one time, would be what is the one time that's included in this 14 million, and everything else would be ongoing.
Right, yeah, would be right.
Okay, and the only reason I'm, just because I want to know how much money we have in our pocket today. That's the only thing I care about on this conversation. No, I mean, this isn't a beaded trap to try to hook you up on something. That's not what I'm about. I just want to know how much money we got in our pocket today.
I will say, oh, sorry, Mike.
No, that was done.
I will say, when we got to September 30th, all one-time funds were already in the reserve at that point, or we picked up the little more in September, which easily came out of the 4.4. There's no way you can say this 14 million is one-time funds.
I
It
agree.
was part of a cash balance on June 30th of 36 some million, and you
Agreed.
don't know. The only way you knew out of that 36 million how much is one-time is what we put in reserve.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So we go back, we take a 156 and then we subtract the amount that was still in reserve, that was one-time money that the sheriff's office gave back. Can we pull that number up?
We did pick up, some in September, so we took care of it though, is what I'm
Right,
saying.
we
out
took
of
care
our
of it, so-
4.4.
Right, so it should be in that number. So can we pull up what the general fund reserve one-time money was for the October budget board meeting?
Yeah, that's the number right there.
I thought
That's,
they would be like 10.
that's weird that I remember that number. That's what I said, it's about 8.5 for one time.
So one time, can you, I can't,
So to find 14 more, it's ongoing. Now, if we determine going forward in 26, 27, it might be prudent to treat it as one time, but at this point, you would have captured all the one-time stuff in September.
yeah.
And that's more so where I'm at, Christie. I mean, of the 163,224,000, I don't see how any more than the 5 million and change that we have on the reserve for the one-time money. I don't see how there's any more than that in there. That's
Right.
that's
Right.
ongoing,
Yeah.
honestly. Again, I'm
Okay.
not. Yeah. So, Chantel, one more time. So will you explain, because I don't want to just gloss over what you have on the side of the sheet here. So what was the thinking for using the general fund reserve at 4.1? So just like 10 days ago? What was to calculate the 14 million?
Well, the 4.1, that reserve balance is part of another spreadsheet that we use for the fund balance projection, which factors into the 37 fund balance that we have. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick here.
You see what Cody and I's point is?
No,
though,
I
like
understand,
that 14,
yeah, I get that, yeah, fine, yeah.
I mean, I do understand what you're talking about, though, how it plays into a bigger number. 14 is not the isolated number we're talking about. We're actually talking about 37,865,000 of fund balance. And it obviously comes from multiple sources. That's why I was just trying to pretend that we rewound 6 months ago. What does it look like?
So, but yeah, my mouse. Somewhere. Right there. So there's your reserve balance, that's the 5.1 million, which then on this projection spreadsheet, of course, we take out what you guys have in the watch list, BT watch list, to get you an estimated lapse of that general fund reserve, which is 3.7.
Can you hang on 1 second?
Yeah.
We're trying to sort of handle stuff.
Yeah. We got a handbook meeting that was supposed to start at 1:30, so we're trying to figure out something. Okay, let's go ahead and do this, guys, if you don't mind. Let's recess this meeting for like 3 minutes. And
Do you need longer to switch over?
Or yeah, how long will you need to switch over?
No, it'll be okay. I'll just keep the stream going. It'll be fine.
Okay, we'll recess for like 3 minutes so that Handbook can go ahead and convene, and then Handbook will do what they need to do. I think they're probably gonna recess almost immediately, and then we can start back into this, okay? All right, what, you
Motion
said,
to recess.
you said that
Second.
clock over there is not correct,
It's
right?
it's fast, it's 1:38.
Okay, it's 1:38, so is there a motion Brandy made a motion to recess BET until 1:41 in this room?
Second.
We got a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are in recess, so Handbook can take over.
You want to? Well, until
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Stick around, Mike. Both mics.
Do you want me to move?
You're an alternate. I like seeing you up there.
Sure.
Jennifer's here.
Joe's here.
No, you're fine. We're good. We're good this time.
Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and call the regularly scheduled handbook committee meeting to order. It looks like we do have all offices represented. Perfect. Notice of the meeting was properly posted on April 13th, 2026. And at this time, because of the BET meeting that needs to reconvene, I am proposing that we recess handbook until 1:30 tomorrow. Is everybody available to do that?
You'll have a new number, right?
For an hour.
Okay, okay.
2:40,
So-
you go that way.
All right, if that works for all offices, I will entertain a motion to recess until 1:30 tomorrow. Oh, wait,
No, sorry, my meeting's
I
at
was
1.
just listening to.
I
oh,
thought it was at 2:08. It's at 1.
so what's the soonest? 2:30?
Probably 2:30.
Does 2:30, we're talking about recessing until tomorrow at 2:30. Just checking to see if it works for all offices. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Will 3 o'clock work?
I won't be here at all.
Okay.
Okay, so that doesn't work for you.
Motion to adjourn and recess.
I'd really prefer not to do that if we can at all help it. What about 1 o'clock?
It's short and sweet.
Is your meeting here on the premises? Does 1 o'clock work for everybody? I guess besides your office.
Yeah.
We'll be able to get through the agenda in 30 minutes. Cause you'll need to leave at 1:30. 2:30 would probably be a better bet if we are gonna go ahead and do tomorrow.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to recess till 2:30 tomorrow.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Sorry.
Is Sullivan still around? He's in the hall.
Or back.
All right,
Let's wait,
That's how they all
for the
do.
bald mic.
Yeah. That's what I said, Mike. That's how all the handbooks do it, just like that.
Was it 1:41?
Sure. Yeah. All right, is there a motion to reconvene BET?
Absolutely not. So moved.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to reconvene BET. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, let's go ahead and start back the conversation.
Albert, you were kind of going through that sheet.
Okay, so this is the fund projection for the upcoming fiscal year 26-27. So, like, for example, like you said, that general fund reserve balance is $5.1 million. And then I've gone ahead and we're subtracting out the BT watch list items just as a precaution. So if you guys do decide to use those funds for these things, the total won't.
You mean when you're calculating the supplement?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then,
Or fund
which,
available.
the fund balance,
Fund
yeah.
balance, yeah.
So which then, that gives you an estimated lapse of 3.7 million of general fund dollars
Okay.
into the new fiscal year. So, and of course, then you have your general fund budget, then you factor in your 10-day payroll, any payments, encumbrances, that all factor in over here for grand totals to get you to the 37,865,221, which is the fund balance for the new projected fund balance for the new fiscal year.
Okay. So on that sheet, when you're factoring in this year's, you just plugged in the 30,053 number at the top, right? What is that, column A?
Yeah,
six,
that's your
column A, row A?
beginning fund balance.
Okay, which is the 16 plus the 14.
Correct, yes.
I mean, honestly, just going back, that's really the crux of where I'm at in this whole deal. I would love to, and personally, I don't feel super confident about how much money we have right now to spend forever. You know, because last year, when we had the 156,768, and this year we have the 163,224, we didn't go down. And if that were the case, and the 14 million were one-time money back then, we wouldn't have had 163 to deal with today,
Right.
at least.
Right. Which,
Well, it's all sources, so yeah, I guess we would have, but
And that's kind of where we're getting at on trying to figure out the 14,050,000, what the sources are that were missed before, because if all of the one-time money was accounted for in the 142,717, then all of the 14 would be ongoing.
So your ongoing and one-time funds with our calculation of the fund balance are not split out clearly.
can you say that again?
The ongoing
Mhm.
versus one-time funds, when we calculate the fund balance, they're not
Of
split
course.
out.
So, yeah, the $37 million fund balance includes everything, the whole general fund reserve. But in the general fund reserve right now, there's only about $5 million that's one-time money. But, cause that's not the whole general fund
No,
reserve.
there's only 3.5.
Yeah.
That's what's
3.5,
happening.
okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, the board decided to spend everything out at one time. Okay. So that's the total general fund reserve, 5.1, and 3.5 of that is one-time money. Correct? Of the current reserve, Christie?
Oh, yes, 3,503,817.
So then, of the 163, only $3.5 million is non-ongoing money.
if you base it off that, yeah, base it off that. But then you also gotta think, in a couple years prior, you got the Sheriff Parkland movie, like, that we're not getting that anymore.
Sure, but that, most of that's been dwindled off. I mean, it started at 14 and then 5.5, I think, went towards the, maybe the behavioral care center or something. I don't know.
5.5, according to what we have. September supplement approved by BB for FY 24-25 dated 9/19/24. One-time funds, it says 5.5 HVAC refund.
HVAC,
capital
that's what it was,
projects,
for the jail.
new jail. 5,300,000 capital projects, juvenile courtrooms. One-time funds to general fund reserve of 8,092,110.32.
And then some went to the jail for operations as well.
And then
4.9 million.
we funded.
Yeah, so
ongoing.
of that $14 million to the sheriff's office, or the almost $15 million to the sheriff's office, again, I don't even know what the right word is. got for salary reimbursement, the majority of that's gone at this point.
Yes.
How much of the 163 is anticipated for FY27 ARPA interest?
That's.
Will that go
understated
into-
revenues.
110.
What's that?
The ARPA interest was at 110,000, projected to be 110,000.
Oh, so it's way low then compared to what it was. Okay, so that's, okay,
It's only half a year and we were very conservative.
okay. But there's a line, is there a line item in the budget or would that go into the general fund reserve? There's a line item specifically for that, isn't there?
When we get to the budget recommendation side, I would say
Yeah,
we save it in one-time funds.
Okay,
Or go ahead and put it in like 2080 or something.
okay.
Say which amount?
110.
It's just 110
Oh, the,
ARPA interest for next year.
What's 2080?
that's the jail account.
2080. you said.
So when you said that you had missed the calculation, there was a cell or something that didn't get moved over. Does that cell have like a label or something on it that says what it consisted of?
It's your fund balance. So we,
uh,
wanna go back to
Yeah.
the statement of revenue.
The cell that was picked up was technically,
The cell that was picked up,
would have been your September supplement.
correct, the September supplemental, which is now the 18th line, yeah.
the
That's the
statement,
cell that was picked up for the fund balance, when it should have been the 30.
So the missing 14 is in there somewhere.
it's in the fund balance, yes. Calculation of all revenue sources.
So after double, triple, quadruple checking this thing, we're confident with 163,224 is the total sources we have to move forward for FY27. And that includes the general fund reserve, which also includes the one-time money of $3.5 million. Right?
Where are you getting 3.5? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
So do you?
I just that. What I think, I know I'm confident with the 05971 and where it came from and what happened. But I feel like we haven't kind of gone down the actual statement of revenues like normal. You know, we just kind of got hit with that news late on Thursday. That's all I've looked at for the most part. So I do know there's a couple interest things maybe that we need to adjust on the statement of revenues. I didn't know if we wanted to add court staff parking in or pick it up in September. The other note I had is on the courthouse reimbursement, the MOU at a full $250. But normally, you know, we just kind of go down through the lines a little bit, unless everyone's comfortable with all the lines. But I just
I think you're right. We need to go down through there.
I mean, do we expect, I mean, yeah, I think going down through the lines is appropriate. I mean, do we expect that ad valorem is gonna go down for FY27?
no.
Okay.
28
Say again.
and 28.
Well, the reason I asked is because
26, 27, we're okay. That's our 26 tax year, and there won't be any of these implications from.
right,
Yeah,
but
but
it
the
shows,
top line,
but the top line shows a $3 million reduction. What we project for FY '26 is 105.3.
Which and I was confused on that number too, because it says year-to-date projected FY 25-26 is 105.
It shows a $2.45 million increase.
And then it shows a $2.4 million increase, but the number in the cell for FY 26-27.
So the difference with those is your year-to-date projection has picked up all sources. When Mike, you don't have really true public utility numbers. You were very conservative or kept it flat.
Yeah, we won't receive that till July.
We've seen it look like this before.
Well, and I'm fine with, I mean, even if, and I'm fine with that, but why would the change show an increase when that's not an increase?
The changes to your amended budget,
Yeah,
the
changes from the
the
budget.
change calculation, it's not from your,
Projected,
projected, it's this number
okay.
versus your projection.
Yeah, you're amended
Okay,
to your projection.
I see.
When you budget to, you do 10/11, so obviously your actual revenue in year-to-date is gonna
Right. Okay.
be quite a bit more.
So in this particular case, we at the September supplement, we thought we were gonna collect 99.7, but we actually think now we're gonna collect 105.3. So we're gonna collect an extra 5 million we didn't anticipate back in September supplement. Is that what that's telling us?
Yes, 99.7 is what we did in September.
Okay.
Is that one of the 95% numbers?
No, it has to, by statute, it's called, you use 10/11s. It's a weird deal.
So there's no $5 million for September supplement.
So the year-to-date projected 25-26 is as of what date?
It's actuals due March 31st and projected for April, May, and June. So it's a full 12 months, just one quarter's projected,
Okay.
estimated.
And it's pretty common for the actual collections to be higher than what we factored in for September supplement.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, always.
Which is way better than the reverse.
Good point.
Okay. All right, so any other discussion on lines 1 through 5 for the property tax portion? If not, then let's move down to intergovernmental revenues.
Mike, is the right number in for your reval budget? Do you know?
What line is that?
6.3, it's line 8.
Now, the 6.3, that's based off a projection we have as well, based on the estimated needs that came from Mike. And I guess, and then that's 6.3. I think we solidify that during before September supplement, once we have everything.
Joe, on the juvenile detention services, the OJA contract, are you guys tracking an increase in that, or the amount staying the same or decrease?
Currently, the amount's the same, but we're working to try to see if we can do something that would close the gap a little bit.
Because that's there in line 10, right?
Yeah.
And actual revenue is just the 484, 408. So we're still about $2.5 million behind on receiving money from OJA.
What I
Is
had
that
been
correct?
told, what I had been told, Cody, and you know how this works, because we don't have a contract. In the past, OJA has not paid us until we had a contract or we did a demand letter and threatened to. And I was told we hadn't received anything, so the 484, but
That's why it was confusing me that we received. Because in the past, it would have been 0.
so we can try to figure that out, but what I was told was we have not received anything.
Okay. But they're not talking about cutting bed numbers or anything like that?
Not in a conversation.
Okay.
Not in what was presented, no. From them.
Okay.
Given a link. Item 14, or row 14, number 14, sorry, row 22.
Is that something to do with their GPS, maybe?
Well, there's GPS fees down there.
So Link used to be the drug testing program, they don't
Oh,
call it that anymore, but it might still be for purchase of drug testing, cause they do collect fees for
Okay.
that.
Okay.
It might be that, I'm not, no guarantees, but that used to be what the drug testing program was called.
Okay.
Pharmacy.
Number line 17, the pharmacy reimbursement. Since the county pharmacy is no longer doing something, I have it.
Yeah, that was it. Remember HAU
Yes.
would reimburse the county for the cost of some scripts that would go out to certain nonprofits, and then HAU would turn around on the backside and reimburse. Any other discussion on lines 6 through 25 in intergovernmental revenues?
I didn't know in courthouse reimbursement, we've got the full 250 there. But they'll have a balance in there. So I thought we just fund what they need to get back up to 250.
Correct. What's the
I think this is going off the contract that Jessica provided.
you know, what their,
For
the balance is?
You
You know what the balance is now?
I don't, we'd have to pull up capital.
See, didn't we have, and maybe this was just me dreaming, but didn't we have discussion about doing it to where courts pay this money that it goes into an account so that we front funded it in the beginning, so we'd be out the $250,000, and then since it's a reimbursement on the stuff, that first $250 we would pay for stuff, and then as we get reimbursements, it would pay for the next, and then we'd get reimbursements on that and pay for the next. So we were front funding the first $250, and then money was going to be coming in and be a reimbursement. Is that?
I think that's right, but
I
whatever
think so,
you
but
have
I
is,
think,
like
I thought-
carryover would be the 250 minus the.
I thought we were
Right,
just starting them
right.
out with 250 every year. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I
Like
thought
we
that's the
would
way we
shore
used
up
to do it. That's the way we were doing it. And I thought we had talked about, and I thought we actually did it, which was to front fund and then let the reimbursements come in. That way we weren't worrying about this every single time. Because then it would just be they would have money as their reimbursements come in, and it would just be a perpetuating thing, and we wouldn't have to, budget it at budget time. Because it would just be coming
But
in
when
that
their
special account.
reimbursements come in, we're booking them, but we haven't moved them back to capital during the year.
Okay,
So we gave them 250 in capital, and they've been spending it, and it's coming in as revenue. But then when we go to budget, beginning of the year, we need to budget that back to capital for that line item, so they can have access to it to spend it again.
okay.
But I'm just thinking it's not a full 250.
Unless there's
Anything
else.
50,000 in there, unless they're anticipating spending $50,000 the last part of this fiscal year, because they do that a lot. Do the carpets and drapes and that kind of stuff towards the end of the fiscal year, and then there would be reimbursement coming in for that the beginning part of next FY.
So you're saying a full 250 in?
Well, I think on the revenue side, but then as far as the budgeting side for what we're gonna put over there, that I don't know.
I mean, they're planning on spending $250 every year, right?
Correct.
So then you have to just
It's
start
like
with
at some
250.
point, you should have your carpet and stuff figured out after so many years.
It's really not starting.
Drapes.
Do lines 6 through 25 look okay to everybody? Okay, then let's move down to, lines 26 through 29.
Hang on, regarding OJA, I just texted Hannah, just to see if, in fact, we had received any funds regarding that. And I told her that we were showing 484, and, she said no, that we haven't received any funds.
No, I think Hannah had said none above the 484. Right?
No funds or 484, maybe? I might have misheard.
It's like Randy said we were showing 484, and I think she was saying
Let me
no.
clarify, well, she's texting. Let me clarify that. Maybe I didn't ask it in the right manner because she just responded no, but she's clarifying here.
Hannah, thank you for watching.
Oh, she said that those may be for transportation reimbursement, the
Okay.
484. She
Which
said, I'll confirm with Grant, but no contracted daily rate funds.
Yeah, we have the contract on transportation, so what is that amount?
No funds collected so far, she said.
And the 2.1 million tracks with what their contract or their non-contract should. Does that make sense?
That I don't know.
Joe, did that question make sense?
You wanna know the value of the contract for housing?
Yeah, the contract or
It's
the
like
I don't
non-contract.
know off the top of my
155
head.
a day.
Oh, okay.
155.6, 155.67 per
Times
day times 50
50
days.
times 365, that would be the,
3.125 million.
We were projecting. Let's see.
2.8. But if that 484 is reimbursement on some transportation, then that 3.125 would be higher than that because that 484 is not part of the daily bed rate. So do we need to increase that revenue?
Might be safe to keep it at 2.8 if we're not getting paid.
I mean, what would,
Lisa, had you had the opportunity to connect with Hannah regarding that OJA contract?
No, I was going to do a line item to get to the vets over at OCJA, and that's what I've been working on. I haven't had any communication with Hannah. She's out on maternity, so I left her up. If you need me to get with them, I can.
I had spoken with her and, I think she'll get with you. I think she'll come speak with you.
Okay, well, I will make sure she gets a copy of that before I flip it over to them. I will make sure she sees it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we can always adjust that number in September.
Yeah.
So if you could, let's verify what that contract amount's gonna be. And if there's more dollars in here, that 484, 408, if that's for reimbursement of transportation, let's find out what the anticipated annual expense or annual revenue is for that, and add that on to whatever the contract amount is at September, for September supplement. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, let's move down to lines 26 through 29.
Nothing.
Anybody have anything on those? If not, they're not numbered, but the next lines down are interest income county and ARPA.
We did have some, I'm not sure where the 2.7 and the 1.2 came from, but, and Albert probably hasn't had a chance to, we sent the actuals, in an email earlier today. And then a breakdown of the ARPA interest. So it'll affect actual revenue column and year-to-date projected, but not in our 26, 27 projections.
Okay.
It's just in the email.
Okay, I'll have that.
That's all I had there.
Christy, do you know on the county, not the ARPA side, but on the county, we had budgeted 3.5 and actual revenue is 2.7, but we're projecting 1.8.
The 3.5 was budgeted. The 2.7 is really $3,083,552.81. And in the next column that's blank,
Yeah.
it'll be projected is going to end up being $3,648,552.81. Those are the two county and ARPA. Actual revenue will be updated, and then the amounts filled in for the year-to-date projected.
So is the bulk, the lion's share of the interest income county, is that on the money from the GO bonds that is sitting in there?
No,
or what is that from?
Bonds are in their own interest. It's all general fund revenue that's there. And it's more than just general fund, but the bonds are invested separately.
Okay.
One big thing, well, two things that affected it. We were not investing the opioid jewel money separate. And during the course of this fiscal year, we've moved it to where it's invested separately. So that took a good $3 to $3.5 million off the table of just constantly being invested. And then we had two rate
So
cuts.
where's the interest on that now being?
It's going
picked up
straight
on?
into the opioid jewel fund.
Okay.
And then we've got rate cuts. There's a forecast of 2 to 3 cuts that are going to total 0.5 to 0.75% by the end of the year. So we're always very conservative with our interest
Okay.
to start with.
Yeah. Okay. If there's no other discussion on the interest income piece, let's move down to miscellaneous revenue, lines 30 through 38. The PPA reimbursement for vicinity.
Yeah, that's in regards to the ICB
Right.
building, but since that's under construction,
And there's not any contemplation that it'll be finished at all in next fiscal year?
Scheduled to be
No,
done
she-
by the end of the fiscal year.
In the next fiscal year? Okay. Okay.
What has got miscellaneous reimbursements? We only budgeted 33,000. Has there been like some one-time reimbursements? Do you know? Come in?
let me see. was a big, back in October. 433, I don't know what makes that up.
Well, we had budgeted just $33,000, but then we've got a projection next year of $633,000. Do you know
433.
what you just took? It looks like you just took 90%,
They 90% of what we
Yeah.
received.
but if that's an anomaly,
Yeah.
that 433, should we even be doing the 90% on that?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
We might need to check.
March is 145.
Where are we putting insurance reimbursements from the flood?
The flood went back into, I think, capital.
Yeah.
Went back into capital.
What was that, the miscellaneous reimbursements for years prior to this year?
Let's look and see here.
We budgeted last year, this time, 120. Actual came in, or projected was 187. We budgeted 67,539. And the year before that, we budgeted 638,000.
So during this, from July to March of 24-25, we had $140,097 in miscellaneous revenue. And go back to 23-24. Let's look here.
Looks like we got a bunch in 23, 24.
We don't know. Everything else.
Or 24, 25.
It's a
It's pretty technical.
It's a catch-all.
Yeah.
It's a big last year in your note, Ruby.
That's where it goes. That's where you are.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously fluctuates quite a bit.
Yeah, like for 23-24, your same time frame, 120,916.
What do we historically put in there for, do we have a,
Looks like we've done different amounts.
It caught my attention because of
substantial?
how much more it is, and it just says 90% out here. And I think 90% is a great rule of thumb on consistent revenues. But if this is miscellaneous revenues and we just get, stuff in and we get an abnormal amount come in, I don't think you would use the rule of thumb on that.
Let me go back here. So, for example, this is the 21-22 statement of revenues, and for miscellaneous, looks like it's taking,
Next one down.
oh, sorry. Your amended and then whatever you're projecting. That's,
Well, that was
That's just the math.
percent of change, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the math. It's what goes into the math.
but then, so yeah, if we could always adjust that percentage.
I'm curious what's driving the big 433 in October. Or the 2
It's a combination of things, your return check fees, overpayments, county jail. There's ATM fees. It looks like there was a big deposit of
Wonder if the,
410,720 included in there. Which,
wonder if that, it said refund to overpayment was one of the things in there. I wonder if there was something we substantially overpaid. It was refunded to us. However it was paid out of is probably where maybe it could have gone to.
let me see, give me a second, I'll find out what makes up that 410 real quick.
Possibly the OSU reimbursement.
The back years,
'Cause it's
those
the
3 years.
410, those 3 years is 410.
And then the other ones,
Was the 144.
that's exactly
There
what
you
it is.
go.
And the other months was, so it's that new CAMA money that,
But it was a catch up, so we won't be getting that much in
Right.
future years. So that number
Yeah,
needs
we
to
definitely
be
need to-
adjusted southward.
You think by that 410 amount?
Not the total amount.
Mike, do you remember what you had it broken down year by
yeah,
year?
we do.
What was it?
410.
Somewhere around 100,
It's
125 a
normally
year.
110 to 140.
Yeah.
There was, the first payment in October was a 3-year back payment. The other was the 140 was the amount from last year.
So the 410 divided by 3, roughly. Is what you're saying?
And you do expect to receive that annually now?
As
Going
long
forward.
as the dock fees continue to roll through, yeah.
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 So maybe we just make a line item for that going forward, so that we don't have to remember next year. Okay.
It is on its own miscellaneous receipt code. I can get it for you.
So y'all want to create its own little line for the OSU.
OSU CAMA reimbursement.
Now, y'all want that reflected on here, for this coming fiscal year?
Well, we can't,
Right.
I don't think we can count on 3 extra years of payment. So that was,
I say we do
300
it now.
do what?
I say we make the line now, starting for so it's all done for July 1.
And we back that 410 out of the miscellaneous category.
Well, you put
It's actually-
140 back in.
It's actually, with the other reimbursement, it's 550.
Yeah.
Total.
Okay, back out whatever we need to, but then make a separate line of the 140
Right.
as income.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's just backing out exactly what they paid in this year, back that out of it, out of that line item, and then put a separate line item for the 140 or whatever. We doing that on the fly, or?
Well,
Looks like he is.
yeah.
Go out.
You need that number, Robert?
Make sure I have the right one here, just.
I don't remember, 612.
14 something.
was I thinking there? I was thinking you leave it, it's just your projection. You've got your new line and just put it in your projection.
Yeah.
Because that'll affect what really happened during and then you'll take that amount out of the 633.
But then maybe we'll make a note for next year that it should be, what did you say, around 110?
It's gonna range somewhere
Oh.
between
But with the
110
14
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that should
The
go there.
140 should go there.
Yeah,
The what?
140,
Yeah.
the estimated revenue for next year in that line item.
Put 140 right there, and then subtract 410 from the 633, 816. Right?
I thought we were gonna subtract 550.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that
then
right?
subtract the full 550,
It's whatever it is, 551 or something.
because there were two different deposits at two different times. Yeah.
With a little luck and law change, maybe that gets a little better.
You've captured what actually came in and where it was booked. You've adjusted, we've now created a line and you've adjusted.
Wait, no, I
So
don't
for
think
the
you did.
actual revenue, so the second box from the left.
To the other corner. That was what you should switch over.
Maybe just change the number.
Change the number, yeah. 59.
But line 37 now says 264,000. That's too high because it had 633, 816. We need to subtract the 500 and whatever thousand from that
Should have
original.
like 120,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's gonna be another monthly in there for 140.
So take out the 140 out on top of the 410.
no. There were two deposits this year, and there were, what was the total? 500 and
I think it was 551, something like that. The first one was 410, and then there was another one for,
yes.
there was another one for 141. So I think the total should be 551. I don't remember that number. It would have been just a couple months ago, or last month.
This one on,
Be on there. You just spoke about it.
Yeah, it was on his.
this one on 324 of
Yeah.
this year was 142,592.
There you go.
And then the total was 553,
There.
312.87.
So you take the 553, 312.87, subtract that from the 633, 816.
What was that last one? 140?
So that number in line
142,592.
37, where
142, 590.
in the projections should be 80,503.
142, 593.
$3,312.08.
So you're saying this should,
That amount should be 80,503,
okay.
which is your original 633 minus all of the CAMA revenue, and then you're capturing the 1 year of CAMA revenue in the new line.
Order of operations to each other.
If you want the actual number, it's 142, 592.
Too many.
Yeah, 20, yeah.
He was giving you
Do you want the actual number?
the,
It
he was
should
giving you
be,
the
Oh,
receipt
the true number is 142, 592.
Okay, no. Albert, you started out in that cell with a number of 633,
Correct. So
816. We need to take out all of the CAMA reimbursements this year. So you just take that 633, 816 and subtract out 553, 313.
Now you're multiplying that by 90%.
Oh,
And then
right,
you
yeah, that's
multiply
what-
by 90.
Well, we'll do parentheses first, mathematically.
So at the 90%, then it's 72,452.70.
You still subtract this.
Go ahead and
Okay.
subtract out
Yeah, you're right,
five.
yeah.
What was
Okay,
it?
I'll,
Yeah, you're doing,
Yeah.
you're in there, check.
553.
What was it, five?
What was it?
553,
553,
312,
313, 312.87. So
313.
the old math would have rounded that up. I don't know about new math.
313.
Can you go on the, what's the first number? Where's that 57? Where's that number pulling from? Is that at 57?
yeah, which is,
It's in the same line. But, so it's pulling the wrong number though, I think. Or, what is F 57, F? That's the projected column.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
we need to.
So we need to subtract the 553 from the column,
yeah.
the
Correct.
year-to-date projected, the
Yeah.
800 and
So the number's right then.
816, 818. Subtract the 553 from that column.
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Right. Well, no.
Cause you still brought in, I mean, you're still
Well,
projecting.
no, yeah,
eight.
you don't want to change your projected number because that number's not going to change, right?
Yeah, I think he's right now because
Yeah.
the year-to-date projected is the 816, 818.
Yeah, but now it shows 263, 505.
Yeah, my math was off of the projected line, but I was doing.
You wanted to
it
change
the
G, not F.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you can't
Because
change
F,
the
you've
actual
already
number.
got that many.
Yeah.
400,000.
So in that
Right.
in column G,
Right.
in column G whatever that is, to me the formula would be 816, 818 minus the 550 something, then multiply that times 90%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would take out. So what's the 92,000? It's subtracted. See, it's subtracted 92,000 and then plus I don't know where all those numbers are coming from.
19, good question.
I guess other amounts than we're expecting to get again this year.
Yeah.
One-time reimbursements, when you think that don't expect to come in again?
Maybe so, but it's still, yeah, maybe.
Well, if you want to leave all that the same, if we're creating a new line item below, where we're putting the 142 in the OSU CAMA, could we not just put the 553 for year-to-date projected as revenue there and subtract the 553 from the miscellaneous line? Then you're not going to change your totals. You're just breaking it out into both of the columns.
You good?
And then you won't have to change your formulas or anything above.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's sticking in, what's happening with 816 is, your 612 divided by 9 times 12 to get you your 9-month average.
Where's? Okay. Because that sheet is good through March 30.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Somehow, some way, the bottom line is we need to get our total revenue down by $410,000.
So Albert, do you see what I was saying? If in F37, where it says 816, 818, don't do this yet. I'm just spitballing here. That's what we're projecting FY 26, 27, I'm sorry, year-to-date FY 25, 26. If we take the 553, 313 out of that number and just move it down 2 cells into the OSU CAMA, but yeah, you'd put the 553, 313 there, then go up to the 816, 818 and subtract the 553, 313.
Too many threes. Too many threes.
So that completely pulls the CAMA into a separate line for this year, both in year-to-date projections and for next year revenue. And so line 37 should not have, in both year-to-date projection and FY 26 projection, it wouldn't have any of the CAMA in either of those 2 cells.
Check yours off with, check your total, make sure it covered the new row you added, the column. The column F, yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I don't think all of that captured.
We did this right, it should be the same. Yeah.
So it's later.
Yeah.
So I don't need to leave now.
The earliest that they're projecting, the metro is 7 o'clock, right? That's what we were sent out earlier.
They had a
Weather briefing.
NWS briefing.
Chris, are you good with those modifications?
Yes, oh yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So okay.
All right, so now we're just down to operating transfers in, transfers out, and fund balance. Are we good with those?
Is the camel line item okay? $140,000.
Yeah, for 1 year, it's like 142, 492, so I think 140 is a good estimate. And then we adjusted the numbers in miscellaneous reimbursements, doing 90% of everything else.
Right.
Okay. All right, is everybody okay with this page?
So now our bottom line is 162, 866, 597.
Can I ask one question? This page,
Yes.
Motion to approve one budget.
Chantel, can you also get a revised
got-
copy of this?
25-26 budgeted expenditures, and you picked up the number of the 156, but that's not what we actually budgeted.
Correct, but in order for it to tie it all out together, we had to add that 14 into it to get you to the 37.
Okay.
Christy, what are you?
Talking about the
When
fund
you're
balance.
doing the big calculation of fund balance,
Yeah, where is that sheet? I didn't see, I was expecting that to be attached. I didn't see it attached. Are we still using?
was it attached?
I brought extras, it may have been handed out, but I
I
brought extras.
think it was on the last agenda where it was handed out, the last agenda, but I didn't know.
Yes, we did hand them out on Thursday.
Has that changed at all? That document based on
No,
you
not
going
to
back
my,
and
not
looking?
to my knowledge, but I've been doing copies. Yeah,
Yeah, can you?
I'll just make sure that it has.
But there's no changes from what we looked at.
Not that I don't believe any changes have been made.
This was not attached, right? So,
No, that was not right.
yeah, without
Oh, it's
objection,
okay.
Okay,
Well,
without objection, the chair will ask that this document be made part of the record.
just that way everybody has what I'm doing today.
What is
It is different.
Christy, will you repeat what you were saying earlier?
The one I had previously is different from this.
Okay.
So this one's correct?
I don't know.
Thank you.
This is,
I'm.
Christy, what number are you showing this different for?
the first number that's different would be your second figure, 25-26 reserves.
Uh-huh,
it's 4.5 on this sheet, 6.2 here. Is that the other miscalculation of the 2 million something? No? The bottom line's the same. So there's that, and then it's just one number, but it doesn't factor into the calculation, so.
This document was attached previously to the revenue projections. 25, 26 reserves.
On Thursday. What is it, Joe, you're looking at?
You're saying it
had
was
the-
attached?
The revenue projections that they provided us, and the sheet she just handed out was attached to that.
But when they gave
Appears to be the exact,
Okay.
oh, no, it's okay.
So Christie, are you saying it was just that one number that changed, but the bottom line number didn't change?
Yeah, that top
How does that
section,
work?
well, that top section doesn't factor into the calculation.
Oh, okay.
But what I was asking about is how we're showing 25, 26 budgeted expenditures of the 156.
That's all right.
When we truly didn't budget that.
Right, I guess we'd have to factor that into,
We do need to pick it up somehow, but
Right. okay. I see what you're saying. It should be the 142.
142, 717, 127, then we do need to plug in the 14.
It won't change this year's totals though, right?
No.
No, it'll still be the 36.
Christie, are you saying the 25-26 budget expenditures, the 156, 768, should say 142?
717.
Yeah, and then have another line in here for the 14 million, whatever, to capture it? Separately.
717,
Okay,
Seven 27 or 127.
127.
Is this line on your sheet, Mike, right?
Yep. Oh, that was on this one, it's not this one.
No, it's the first one Chantel handed out.
For trees.
Maybe in the 25, 26 projected revenue, put it in there.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking
That 142,717, Mike, is the actual budget that,
We actually
that we
budgeted.
actually budgeted at September, the budget was approved on 9/9/18.
Yeah. But what we could do maybe, it'd probably be more appropriate in 25, go up to the number 1 calculation. So 25, 26 projected revenue. You can either add it to there.
Yeah. Otherwise, right now, it looks like it was actually
Our budget
budgeted
was
this year, and it
156.
wasn't.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That makes sense, Albert.
So would you like to see it in the projected revenue then, or would you like its own separate line item?
It's the pleasure of the board. I would say a separate line item, but
Yeah, because it's not
Yeah, just to make sure.
25-26 budgeted expenditures. If we go to look at this document again in the future, it's not gonna, it can be confusing if it says the 156.
Okay, add an extra line. So, yeah.
All right, so are we comfortable with the numbers now.
So then, once you add the separate line and do the calculation, that number one should be the 18,972,288. And then lower the 156 by 10. Okay.
So that 14, you want me to put it in the number one
Well,
area?
it's almost like we're picking it up as revenue to start
Right,
next
but-
year, so I would just,
Or would you rather have it in the number 2 section as far as part of the last?
you're talking about budgeted expenditures to estimated actual expenditures.
I mean, it's probably lapsed funds, because it's already in the bank, right?
Yeah,
Should be
I
identified
can,
as a
I can put
separate
it wherever
number.
y'all want, I'll just have to put it.
Rather than lumping it in with the rest of the lapsed funds, can we
have its own
identify
line.
it
Yeah, we
separately?
can make its own line in the last.
Say like an unbudgeted lapse.
Yes.
Well, never mind. My filter kicked in.
Where's that button?
It doesn't work very often.
Except your range staples button. Okay, I mean, again, I feel like, just to make sure we're seeing all this right, because we've taken I mean, because the original document that was given to us today, it was assumed that 14,050,000 was considered one-time money. What made you think that was one-time money? I just wanna make sure we're dotting all of our i's and crossing our t's to make sure we know how much money we have in our pocket. Do you see what I'm asking? So the original sheet that was handed out, what made us think that 14,050,000 was all one-time money? Just to make sure, because if we talk about it, maybe it'll spur something in somebody's mind that we can make sure that we're not missing something.
Well, I was just taking into account the whole initial sheriff ARPA money and how it's just a one-time
Okay,
concept, and from there roll down.
okay, yeah, but most of that's gone.
It's already been accounted for sometime.
Yeah, and a lot of it was gone before September supplement
Yeah,
this year.
yeah.
Yeah, we will have to have some discussions, before our May budget board, when we're budgeting all this money out. We may wanna seriously consider it being one-time money, but we can, for the sources for the statement, it's,
The 162,866. Is that what you're saying? We're comfortable on that? Isn't that the number?
163.
162.
No, it changed.
Oh, it
Because
did.
of the
162,866, 597.
Oh yeah, we took that, came out. Yes.
So are you saying we're comfortable with that, so we can make a recommendation to budget board that this is the estimated revenue that we're gonna utilize moving forward to establish the July 1 FY 26-27 budget off of, and then we can come back in here when we're having the more deliberative process on a recommendation for the 7-1 budget. Specifically, we can have discussions about that 14 million, how we're gonna treat it.
So does the budget board take action to certify what revenue we're
On Thursday.
Mhm.
It's on the agenda on Thursday.
Sorry, I'm
Right.
right.
yes.
Thursday.
How long are you gonna keep using that excuse?
He actually was on here for a while and left and came back, and he's calling him new.
It's changed.
So, let's pretend no September supplement. We don't get anything during September, which we obviously will, but let's pretend we don't get anything for September. Next year, sitting here at this time, we would have about $159 million, because of that 163,800, only 3.5 is considered one-time money that is in the current general fund reserve. Right?
That and then the $110,000 projected revenue for ARPA interest next year.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, that majority is 3.9. And going with that logic, then it would seem that the 11-ish million dollars would be ongoing of the 14, and then 4 million would be one time. I'm not saying that's correct or not. I'm just saying if we're going off of that.
I mean, again, I haven't dove into these numbers like you all have, and that's why I'm trying to make sure I get it, but I don't see how any of the 14 is considered one-time money. I think the one-time money was already there
I agree.
in the reserve,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying, and I just
We
wanna make sure
accounted for all the
that we
ones.
agree.
Yeah.
Because the sheriff's ARPA money was in there well before this happened.
So then the full 14 million would be ongoing, not one time.
Did I say that wrong?
No, you said that right. I'm just clarifying that.
Well,
Definitely for purposes of the statement of revenues, I mean, it's,
Yeah, but I think Brandon's talking about for
we're
establishing.
budgeting?
Yeah,
yeah, when we do dive into those deliberate conversations, I just wanna make sure that we know. I mean, obviously, I would never vote for a budget that we're not gonna have that money again next year,
right,
but.
right.
Okay, yeah,
I think
I
we've
think I'm good if
lost-
y'all are.
With this situation, we've lost the ability when to use it and how to use it. We just need to, I'd hate to use the 14 million for ongoing and then
Well, let me ask you this, so if we were, again, going back to this time last year during September supplement, and they would have come in and they said, hey, your total sources available are 156,768,000, would you have been uncomfortable then using that as
Well-
one-time money?
when you say this time last year, you mean in the spring?
No, in this,
Well, September supplement, they would have been bringing us about 20 million. We would have had the 4.4 plus the 14.
right, we'd have had the 18,502,996.
Mhm.
So,
Right, I'm with you.
would you have been uncomfortable then using that as ongoing money?
No.
So, I mean, not to
But
put you
we've
on the spot,
already
but why now?
budgeted and we're
Yeah.
paying our bills and we're, but if
Okay.
you're gonna take 14, I mean, it's a windfall for next year.
but to me, the most that you would consider one-time money, in my opinion, would be the 14 million minus whatever one-time reserve dollars we had beginning in
this
September. In September supplement, which was, and that's what I was trying to get at earlier on that number. What was it, 10 million or 8.5?
Yeah, you mean the total reserve?
Yeah.
It was 10.1.
Oh, I thought
No.
you were talking about,
No, the
Never mind.
one-time
8.5.
reserve, the one-time reserve dollars that we had at the beginning of, at the revised budget. When we did the revised budget and we missed $14 million, we do have some one-time funds commingled with ongoing funds. Well, if we knew the number was 156, if we could rewind time and say the number was 156, but we don't know what was one time and what was not, we could just say that, all of the one-time money that was in reserve wasn't accounted for. All of it could have been accounted for, and the 14 million is all ongoing money. But the conservative approach, I think we could say, well, none of the one-time money was accounted for. It was all included in the 14 million. And the one-time money that we had at that time was the $8.5 million that was sitting in reserve. So you would take the 8.5 from the 14, and 8.5 would be one-time money, and the balance would be ongoing.
I don't know if I'm following. I know
Yeah,
in
I know what I'm
September,
doing.
we accounted for all the one-time money.
Yeah.
Pick up the 1.5 and got it in there.
Right.
In my mind, without the 14, we took care of all our one-time money. We got it segregated.
It was already there.
It was
Oh,
already there.
I agree. I agree. So with that, then the 14 million would be all ongoing money, not one time. So I'm saying that if you want to be super conservative, I think the most you would do is not say all 14 million is one-time money. You could say, well, whatever we had in reserve at that time that was one-time money, maybe we take that out of the 14, but I think the full 14 might be able to be treated as ongoing money.
Yeah, the only reason I'm trying to beat this horse is, I mean, when you just talk about just the jail and just the BCC alone, you're talking about the jail's asking for what, 8 more? And
8.7.
Yeah.
8.7?
That's,
So,
that's gonna come down.
well, but at least the current ask is that, so that's all we have to go off of. So 8.7 and the BCC's asking for 3.6. We know for a fact that's gonna be ongoing stuff. I mean, so I that's why I'm just hesitant to lock it into a one-time box. When one, I don't think it's one time. I mean, and two, there's legitimate needs out there and asks that do fall under that constitutional umbrella. Yeah, that's.
So Cody, let me see if I understand what you're saying. So the 14, when you're looking at it, you're saying that the balance in general fund reserve one time, whatever, 8 million is what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, that's what they said it was.
So you're kind of saying now that we found the 14, you're gonna say the 8 is gonna come out of that.
I'm saying the most that you would say would be one time would be what was one-time money at that date.
Okay.
But I think it's very likely that we already picked all of that up and this 14 million is ongoing money. So I think it's either all 14 million is treated ongoing moving forward, or at least the balance between the 8.5 and the 14 would be ongoing money. But I don't see any world where all 14 million would be one-time money, because we didn't have $14 million of one-time money at the beginning of this.
Right, but in 26, 27, it's a windfall. That's what I said. This situation created the when we can use the money and how. So I think the whole 14 is ongoing, the source of it, right?
Yeah.
Because we've accounted for all our one time.
Yeah.
But now you've got this 14 in a brand new fiscal year. To me, it's lost identity and it's a windfall. This is a $14 million windfall. And that's why I was saying we treat it as one time.
I have a question, and apologies, this could have been answered already. The third string JV here. The left ball. The 14 million, it is all from this fiscal year that was missed in October.
Right. September.
September. Was it from the September supplement?
It should have been on the.
It should have been on
Should
the
have got
September
picked up.
supplement.
Should have got picked up then.
So next year, and when you add the 14 million into our budget for this year, our budget next year reasonably would be close to the same amount. So we can expect the same 14 million to show up next year.
Correct.
Okay. That's where I was getting hung up. Thank you.
I missed the meeting last week, and this may be the inappropriate time to say it, or I left early for another meeting over at Juvenile. But didn't we say that all of the estimates of needs were in the neighborhood of 150?
158.
Oh, 158. Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood when I watched the meeting.
So you're saying had the 14 been there, yes, this year it would be comparable in next year, but you didn't, and you brought it over here, so I don't know if next year would be.
Well, you're not gonna get 14
We're not gonna
again.
get 14 again.
Well, see, that's while we're talking about one time or ongoing,
It gets confusing.
it gets confusing first off.
I'll be glad when one time money is gone.
I know.
And that's why to me, I liken this back to what we were talking about on the miscellaneous receipts. We went through, there was a number that didn't look right, and so we said, what is included in that miscellaneous receipts? And we identified it as 4 years of payments for the CAMA, and we said, okay, but one of those years we know is going to be carried forward, so we know where this this larger amount, what it's attributable to. So now we can figure out, since we know what it's attributed to, we can figure out how we need to treat it moving forward. So we took the 553 and we took that all out and then added 142 back for that year. And that's what I'm getting at on this 14 million. We need to know what it's attributed to so that we can then know whether that's something that we can count on in the future or not count on in the future.
So on June 30th, 2025, 36 some million dollars was our cash balance. It went through the whole gamut of revenue coming in and all of that. And it's on the budget side when we have designated one time or not.
Right.
You can't, so out of the 36 million, when you got down to a $30 million figure, there's one little lapse money you take out. So that 30 million, you can't look at that and say that dollar's ongoing, that dollar's.
Right. So that's why I'm saying worst case, you would look at all of the one-time dollars that we had at that time. And then at September supplement was 8.5. That was all of the one-time money that we had. Was the, because.
Already set that aside this year.
Yeah, these are, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
so
these
that's
are
what
two
I'm saying.
entirely different issues.
So that's why I'm saying it's either
money coming
all.
in and how we budget.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that it's either all 14 million is ongoing, or if it's not all ongoing, the maximum amount that would be one-time funds would be what we had that was one-time dollars when we started the year, which was the 8.5 million. Because if we only have $8.5 million of one-time money on our books, and we have $14 million that's part of our revenue, well, the most that $14 million can be associated as one-time dollars would be all of the one-time dollars that we had on the books, which was $8.5 million. So, I mean, to me, on the one-time money, it's either, on the $14 million, it's either all ongoing dollars or it's 8.5 million one time and then whatever that difference is,
Well, I think
6 million.
But I think
one
what
time.
Chris is saying is before the 14 was even contemplated, the 8.5 was already in the reserve.
Yeah. So then it would be 14 million would all be ongoing.
Right. No, I totally agree. Just, one thing I actually just noticed on this sheet, during the amended budget, September of 2025, our reserve balance was, so let me ask you this. So on the sheet that Chantel gave us first, on September 18, 2025, where it shows amended, it shows one-time funds of 1.5 million. What is that?
ARPA interest.
Okay. But that 142,717 includes what I'm saying is that the budget that the budget board adopted in September of 25 for FY 26's budget year was 142,717, right?
Yes.
One-time money was well more than that in general fund reserve.
Right, but at the amended, you're just picking up your surplus.
Mhm.
You're not picking up, you've already started a budget July 1.
Right. That was in
put
the
stuff
138,265.
Okay.
Right, and you're picking up the delta.
Right.
138.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why
I see what you're saying.
I'm inclined to think all of the 14 million is ongoing. But if it's not, I think the split, to be conservative, would be to say, well, none of the 8.5 was included in this, so let's treat that as one time and then the balance. But
It's a dollar, it just kind of loses its. You've already. I think it's for purposes of the money coming in. We've already accounted for what we know is ongoing or is one time. Yeah, it's one time.
which is the 3.5 or whatever that we have sitting in the reserve is one time right now, right? Okay. Yeah.
Today's business, though, is to adopt the revenue projection
Which revenues
for the budget board to, or to recommend it for the budget board to adopt on Thursday.
Yeah.
Because I bet we have a lot more conversation.
Yeah.
about this.
Okay, so on
We'll take
item
this all
7, do we have a motion to recommend a budget board to set the revenue for FY 26-27, beginning July 1 at 162,866,597.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Is there any?
I just wanna confirm real quick, 162,866,597.
Yes, and Albert has adjusted the document up there, and I'm assuming that's what you'll attach. Okay. Okay, all right, we are done with item number 7. We have other agenda items on here. Is there anything that anybody wants to go back and address?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to do is just pass on that bid estimates we need from us. And going back through the contract list, I subtracted one that I talked about in here that I could not tie directly to constitutional duties, which is the natural stuff, which is SROs. And then also there is a modified request for personnel. The judiciary has come to us, and for some reason their threats are pretty elevated right now, and so they're asking, and at some point the presiding judge is going to come in and kind of make the request, but ideally they'd love to be able to see one in every courtroom. Right now there's 38 judges, Mike? 38
In this building.
between us and juvenile.
Yeah, between the two,
So,
39.
And so right now we only have 36 people total, which includes all the judges, all the floors, entry, and the front entrance. So in order to get, I mean, it is a substantial ask, but all I can do is ask. And again, Stinson does plan on coming in at some point whenever we start deliberations. So there is a 14-person increase on that. So that would be, again, a person for every judge. And then you'd still have people at the front desk, still have people at the guard shack. I call it the front desk, the entryway. So I'll just slide that around. 1, 2, 3.
Or did you pick up, you were having 10 doing transport.
That's
correct?
on-
Or would that
that's-
be 10 of the 14 that were also being paid?
It could be, yes. Yeah, it would be, because we're gonna have to use them somewhere. But of course, there's no funding for that, because that funding is over the jail budget.
What tab are you?
Again, I know it's not deliberation time, I just wanted to hand, 13, I believe, like number 13. I at least wanted to hand that out, so that's available for when we do get into those discussions.
So just so I understood, your changes from your other one, you took out SROs and you've added,
No, I took out, on the big line items, the contracts line items, and that long list of contracts and stuff that I read off. One of those was for Nazaro, and so it's $5,225, and that's that request. And then the only other change is the salaries associated with 14 people, and then the FICA, the retirement, and then the health benefits. Just guessing what that might be.
so what'd you say about SROs then? Was
Okay,
that
so-
the 5,200 contract
yeah.
related to them?
Yes.
So what is that contract for?
It's for in order to be an SRO that gets sent to a school, it's called Nazaro, and I'm not honestly not sure what it stands for. Maybe something SRO, School Resource Officer. I got that part probably national for the first letter, but it's just a school that they go to train them how to I mean, I think these were best practice, but best practices for SROs and what's expected, and so. And it's, we turn over SROs somewhat frequently, at least a handful a year, 1 or 2, maybe 3. And that school's $500-600 a person, something like that. And plus sometimes there's travel associated with it. So again, I just wanted to take it out of what we consider constitutional.
You're still asking for it though, right?
I'm not.
Oh, you're not?
I'm
Okay.
not. No, we would pay for it out of a cash account.
Okay,
Not.
that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're not gonna send them to training?
No, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So move from general fund to special revenue.
Right. Well, right now, it's all being paid out of special revenue. or actually
Oh,
service,
okay.
it's actually all in service
And you
fees.
had added it, but now you're, okay.
Correct, I just wanted to remove it because again, there's no way for me to tie that back constitutionally
Where does the money the schools pay for the additional school?
into service fees.
So into special revenue?
Well, I mean, not to get technical, but so there's service fee, special revenue, and grants. Those are the three we have. So special revenue are things that are, you don't perform a service to get it.
But is it a special revenue fund?
They all three are.
Service fee?
It's a cash
On a
payment.
fine
Yeah,
line,
it's a
yeah.
cash, yes, yeah.
So like highway cash
Is a special revenue.
is a special, but on the sheriff's office,
It's called
and this was from whenever we were doing these estimate of needs, and it kind of confused me for a while. But one of those that we call highway cash, one of theirs they actually call special revenue.
Yeah.
That's the
The title,
title of it.
sheriff's
So I
special
think
Right,
it's-
I'm talking about the general description of what the
Yes,
fund is,
yeah.
not the name.
Yeah, it would be, so we would call it special revenue.
Do you mind going over these big ones again? Obviously,
Yeah, of course.
uniforms is pretty
Yeah.
self-explanatory.
Which one, which one?
Like I guess it's law enforcement supplies.
Oh, yeah, so,
Yes.
and like Chrissy pointed out, yeah, I rolled up, I don't have that list of contracts with me that I had the other day. But, you know, it includes a lot of things, and that was a long list that I read off, things like investigative, tools, things like, body cameras, it includes tasers, those sorts of things.
Handcuffs.
Yeah, well, handcuffs just roll up into another line, the uniform and wearing apparel. And one thing I'd like to point out on that too, that 447,292, again, that's only, and that number didn't change from the first time I submitted this estimates in need, but that's only for the things we consider constitutional. So the SROs, those uniforms, there's $80,000 that we would pay for out of our cash accounts. It would be identical to this one, but again, I can't attribute that back to what I would consider constitutional, so we did not include it in the general fund ask. I can get you the whole list with the exact breakdown if you need
They
that.
were buying their own uniforms.
Well,
Is that? I mean,
They don't-
belts, whatever.
Well,
what were they buying before?
they
that
get
you're asking
they get issued an allotment when they first hire on.
Okay.
And then from there, they get basically one every couple of years. So anytime something breaks, they're buying it, they buy their own boots, they buy their own belts, they buy their own keepers, they buy their own, and there's actually two belts, there's an inside belt and an outside belt. And you have keepers that keep together, and there's a whole bunch of equipment that they purchase themselves, and then we do issue some of it. Again, we issue the initial uniform stuff, and with ARPA, we were able to issue the firearms. So that was part of the community violence intervention program that was approved for ARPA. So we do issue a firearm now. So
Okay. And then what is the law enforcement equipment?
the one on the bottom, that's vehicles.
1.7?
That's vehicles.
So how
So
many is that?
so it's the total vehicles that we have is, again, that I can attribute to what I would consider constitutional, is about 135. But that doesn't replace all 135, of course. And those vehicles, you know, are about, when they're updated, they're about $60,000 a piece. So that $1.8 million, you know,
It's
divided
roughly for
by
how many
60,000, it's about 30 a year. So it keep us on a constant rotation.
So that's for, that and it's a amounts for lease 30 program, vehicles. correct?
Say again.
It was a lease program?
Well, it kind of gives us some options because oddly enough, the total lease program is about $1.8 million. But at the same time too, if we bought them outright, which is by far the best option, if we could guarantee that this money would go on forever and ever, buying them outright is way smarter. I mean, you're paying a ton of interest for no reason.
Right.
And if for some reason, let's say we got the first 30 in and all of a sudden the county doesn't have the money anymore, we got to give those cars back.
Right.
And we've likely already sold the other ones.
Right.
So,
if you lease.
if we leased,
So
ideally,
this is for the purchase of 30 vehicles.
exactly. And our hope would be that it would go on annually because then we could rotate 30 new ones into the fleet at least every 5 years, the fleet is rolled over entirely. That would be the aim.
And what you're doing now is leasing.
We are not.
No,
You're not.
we've been.
But the only reason we were able to purchase ones we had was because of CARES and ARPA. We bought 47 with CARES, we bought 75 with ARPA.
So if you were owning vehicles and you're switching out for older ones, what do you do with the older vehicles when you're getting rid of them?
Well, historically what we've done is we brought them to the junkyard because they got 650,000 miles on them and they're literally not even worth parts. if we could get into a legitimate system, you know, there's a lot of models out there, like with, people hear about Kansas State Highway Patrol, Michigan State Police. They are on a system, ideally we'd love to get into, but, I know the money's not there. They get rid of their vehicles at 45,000 miles and they sell them, and the program is nearly self-perpetuating. Because, when you buy these, for example, when the CARES Tahoes came in, just the basic Tahoe was like $38,909 a piece, something like that. So $39,000. You can't buy that Tahoe for near that price off the street. So whenever you turn around and sell a Tahoe that you bought for $39,000, 2 or 3 years later with 45,000 miles on it, to the general public, you're selling for more than what you bought it for, because the same Tahoe is $65,000 or $70,000 off the floor. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the program is nearly self-perpetuating. So to answer your question, we would auction them because we'd be actually auctioning a decent product.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, is because once you got to the point where you were auctioning when they have 200,000 instead of 600,000,
and all that money would roll back into the general fund.
Yeah. So this by purchasing the vehicles, it would allow you to start a program like that.
It would be, again, it would be long term. If that money was available every year, we realize that revenues are like EKGs. I get that, but yeah, it would allow us to buy vehicles every single year, and about 30 is what we feel like would be, ideal for the size of our fleet.
How many miles on average are you putting on a vehicle per year?
That on average, I don't know. I know across the whole fleet we drive about 2.7 million miles a year, is what Fuel Man tells us. And so, but the reason I say it varies widely is because, let's say an investigator, who is not necessarily driving park, but they go to specific locations and they might be on scene for quite some time, is going to be much different than the guy that's having to drive to California 3 times a week, to pick up an inmate for the district attorney or the judge. So it varies widely. And those are the ones that we would put on obviously a faster rotation, just because otherwise you're just really, sinking into your resale value. And another issue that, by keeping them on a rotation like this, it really helps maintenance, because anything that lube touches, we can pretty much keep under warranty.
Okay, so let's hypothetically say that you purchased 30 vehicles. Next year, if you're doing it on a rolling basis, next year you need 30 more, but we don't have the budget. Then what do you do?
Well, we would just be back in the position we're in now. We just wait until, there's enough drug money that's saved up over, however many years it takes, and we just buy as many as we can. I think the last purchase we made before the ARPA money was, I think we bought, and I'd have to go back, I think we bought 13 Dodge Chargers in 2019. And so that was the last time we had purchased vehicles. And again, we just used seizure money that had come in over the course of several years prior.
Does one type of vehicle benefit you over another? Whether it's a Tahoe, whether it's a Charger?
Probably availability, isn't it?
Well, it's availability is pretty decent for Chevrolet stuff. They have a pretty big allotment for the build code that law enforcement uses, called 9C1. So it's a build code specifically made for law enforcement off the Chevrolet line. And so, but to answer your question, sure, not everybody needs to drive, potentially a 4x4, but, somebody working out, the east side that's, constantly up in pastures, Ford Taurus just doesn't do the job very well. So it varies widely. Transport vehicles, they can be pretty standard equipment.
I'm wondering, just based off, if you could do based off whatever the officer's need is, like you're saying. Sure. And you might be able to get more than 30 vehicles for that price.
100%. Yeah, this is just that's an exact number, but that was factoring in based on exactly what our fleet looks like right now, which likely won't be that way going forward. Because again, we were able to use the CARES and the ARPA money because of very specific things, the air conditioner systems and the way it's set up and designed to the Tahoe. So we would certainly be evaluating that moving forward. One, there is some positive things to going with everything the same, and then there's some negatives. Positives, obviously, you're only going to keep one kind of oil filter, one kind of wiper blades, one kind of tire, one kind of this. There's obviously benefits there. And if for some reason you crash one, all that equipment can come out and go into another one just like it. So there are benefits to having the same, and obviously there's some, potential cost issues if a vehicle you choose.
Well, even if you only had two types, you had
Sure,
Tahoe and you
sure.
had a Charger or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, historically we had a hodgepodge, which is terrible. When you got 24 oil filters out there, and that's really difficult to maintain from a fleet perspective.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and also I would think from an officer's deputy safety perspective, if you've got a vehicle that's in for service and you're driving something that's completely different that you're not, as used to the way they handle and what they, can do, it's a completely different type of vehicle.
And that is one thing too, kind of to Ryan's your question, what do you do with the old vehicles? Well, we do keep a certain, what we call a pool, because, whenever a car goes down for maintenance, you can't send the deputy out without nothing, so you gotta give them something you gotta have a few extras so they can hop in.
Motion to adjourn?
Second! That was quick. All right.
Not quick enough.
Yep. Just one second. Did we have anybody sign up to do citizen participation? Okay. We can skip board comments unless anybody has anything they want to
I
say.
did have something real quick on item
Nobody
4.
ever has anything until we.
I'm so sorry. So sad. So it's the future forecast tracker. I just wanted to update the forecasted cost for a behavioral care center based on the estimate of needs. So it's currently listed at 1.5 million. So to update that to $3,545,125 per their estimate of needs for the FY27. And also their FY28 forecasted cost was $6 million, which will actually reduce slightly to $5,259,707.
Say that 5 million again.
$5,259,707.
So that is the more conservative one. It could be less than that depending on what model we choose to go with. Right, whether it's a hospital, residential, whatever, or the crisis center. If you do 2 crisis and 1 residential, it's more expensive than hospital, crisis, residential. So it depends on the model you go with.
One other thing, and I'm gonna take my time, I'm new here. But I'm seeing that some of the expenses coming up, like there's that April 2026 estimated start date to replace the JJC chiller. I'm not seeing that in their estimate of needs under capital. Should that be considered in the estimate of needs for this year? And then same question, I think the court services contracts are reflected. I haven't compared the total, but the PBA and MIS, would the PBA numbers need to be considered? Because those are upcoming too, 2026.
That's the
I think that's.
PBA trustees.
Yeah.
We usually just handle general fund
Okay, so just the general government is what we should be looking at. Okay.
and
What I
capital.
Okay.
Capital.
But for the chiller, since that is estimated start date, April 26. So it's a $900,000 up to $900,000 expense.
Where did we lose that?
Well, I mean,
the
that's kind of
was based on when we were gonna do courtrooms over there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
right.
now that that's not happening, it
That's
could be 600,000.
Yeah.
Depends on the size of the chiller that's needed.
I think we rely on each department to fill out their estimate of needs and I appreciate you tracking that, but if they need it, starting in the beginning of the fiscal year, they need to put it on their estimate of needs, whether that's capital from Keith or, juvenile Hannah.
So should we, for estimated start date, make adjustments to that? I just don't want to have estimated start dates in the past on a future forecast tracker.
I hear you.
I think we can have the infrastructure committee maybe take a look at some of those dates and.
I'm not on infrastructure anymore.
Yeah, but you have an employee that's on it, right?
I do.
So So yeah, if infrastructure can maybe take a look at the timelines on stuff that's on there and see if there's any adjustments that need to be made.
You could probably take that.
All right, we've got a motion on the table. So,
And a
Start that off.
and a second on the table. So let's go ahead and dispense with that. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?